Okay, everyone, I guess we're live. It's the first time doing this. They're doing the last introductions now. Britt Hume's on the TV. And you may end up hearing a little bit of the audio in the background, but I'll help you keep synced with what I'm doing. I'm not doing this just for those people listening in to try to infringe on their copyright. I'm just trying to do this as a challenge. So, and I'll also get used to looking at the camera itself, because this is kind of new to me. Hope everyone's doing okay. And okay, just as a reminder, this is on YouTube as well as the Mixler channel, mixler.com/podcast99, or look for myself, Jeremy Hannon, on the YouTube. And here we go. They should be starting, well, we got 5 minutes till the debates officially start. So, let's see. Don't worry, it's ginger ale. Okay.
Stand by. Come on out, guys. You think they're coming back? They're coming up with their game plan back there? Game plan. Maybe they're conferring with each other? Yeah. Come on out. We're going to begin. We're just going to shout out the names. With the Ohio governor, you may be familiar with him, John Kasich. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul.
Ted Cruz.
Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Florida Senator Marco Rubio. And New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And now all
Father and computer programmer Jeremy Hannon.
on the front page of the papers tomorrow. All the candidates standing together. We'll see who's talking to each other, who's not talking to each other. Well, that's awkward. Well, that was the whole point. Don't stage the news. They're not feeling it. I'm like, you guys nervous? We're a little nervous too. That'll be fine. That sounded like the buzzer. We saved them from that buzzer. That's right. We'll blame that. We'll talk about the buzzer in just a minute. There was controversy. It's good to see you, gentlemen. Welcome. And what do you think of this crowd? So basically, in a moment, just so the audience understands and the candidates know, they're going to stand behind these lecterns and we're going to give you the rules, which of course their campaigns have already been informed of. They know the rules, but we'll go over them again just one more time, and the audience will be brought up to speed, and then we'll get started with our questions. You know, it's so interesting, and I guess they all know this. They've been talking about each other a lot during the previous 6 months or so. Now they're going to get an opportunity to talk to each other, and obviously this is all part of the process of the American people here in this hall and across the nation trying to sort out who should be the Republican nominee for president in 2016. So this is part of the great American process. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Please go to your podiums. That was awkward enough. Let's get to you. And, it's important to point out that this debate obviously is the top 10 in polling. They were chosen by the position from top to bottom in the positioning on the stage. And remember, we had another debate on this very stage from 5 to 6 that included 7 other candidates. This is a huge feat. That's right. But these guys are glad that Carly Fiorina did not appear in the 9 p.m. hour because, boy, she unleashed a can, if you know what I'm saying.
I wish I watched the earlier debate too. I'm kind of like Carly.
Because, there's been a lot of questions. Should it be divided? Should it not be divided? And yes, there were 2 tiers. There were the 7 lowest in the polls. Now we have the top 10 in the polls. But, it's a fluid process. And it was certainly true 4 years ago. Some that were in the lower tier are going to jump up. And perhaps some that are here tonight are going to slip down a little bit. But there's a long time between now and the snowy caucuses in February in Iowa. We should point out our next debate is right before the Iowa caucuses, and it's going to be quite something. This is, I think, going to be very meaningful. It would have been tough to have 17 candidates up here, as great as it would have been to try to find a way to do it. But it would have been like herding cats. So, Tom, I think that's it. All right, guys. All right. So the audience knows we're going to restart at the top of the hour because that is when the nation believes that this debate starts, not at 8:50. So we'll get it going at 9 o'clock, and we'll have a clean start to the show, and we'll take it from there. This audience has been great. We're going to talk about, the excitement and how we're going to make this all come together.
And they reset for the top of the hour.
It is 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and the moment of truth has arrived. Welcome to the first debate night of the 2016 presidential campaign, live from Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Megan Kelly. Along with my co-moderators, Rick Bear,
Tonight, thousands of people here in the queue, along with millions of voters at home, will get their very first chance to see the candidates face off in a debate, answering the questions you want answered.
Less than a year from now, in this very arena, one of these 10 candidates, or one of the 7 on the previous debate tonight, will accept the Republican Party's nomination.
17 candidates, assuming no one else enters the race. And if the way things are going, who knows?
Just a few hours ago, you heard from the candidates ranked 11 through 17, and now the primetime event, the top 10. Also of note, Fox News is partnering for tonight's debate with Facebook. For the past several weeks, we've been asking you for questions for the candidates on Facebook. Nearly 6 million of you, 6 million viewed the debate videos on our site, and more than 40,000 of you submitted questions, some of which you will hear us asking the candidates tonight.
They had to partner with Facebook. Almost makes me wonder why they think they're still.
Here they are, positioned on the stage by how they stand in the polls. In the center of the stage tonight, businessman Donald Trump. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush? Looking good?
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee.
Neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson. Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And your very own Governor of Ohio. I think he would call that a home field advantage. It might be. We'll see.
The rules of objections coming.
It might be.
Oh, and once again, father, computer programmer, Jeremy Hannon, the mystery 11th candidate tonight.
We also have a big crowd here with us tonight in the home of the Cavaliers, as I mentioned. And while we expect them to be.
And they don't have to deal with a camera on them 24th. I mean, the entire debate. So.
For the candidates. So we're looking for somewhere between a reaction to a LeBron James dunk and the Cleveland Public Library across the street. Somewhere there we'll find a balance tonight. Without further ado, let's begin. Gentlemen, we know
Here we go.
how much you love hand-raising questions. So we promise this is the only one tonight. The only one. Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, to be clear, you're standing on a Republican primary. I fully understand. The place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod. I fully understand. And the experts say an independent run would almost certainly hand the race over to Democrats and likely another Clinton. You can't say tonight that you can make that pledge. I cannot say. I have to respect the person that if it's not me, the person that wins. If I do win and I'm leading by quite a bit, that's what I want to do. I can totally make that pledge. If I'm the nominee, I will pledge I will not run as an independent. But and I am discussing it with everybody. But I'm talking about a lot of leverage. We want to win, and we will win. But I want to win as the Republican. I want to run as the Republican nominee. So tonight you can't say if another one of these. What's wrong? Okay, what's wrong? He buys and sells politicians of all stripes. He's already. Hey, He's already hedging his bet on the Clintons, okay? So if he doesn't run as a Republican, maybe he supports Clinton, or maybe he runs as an independent. Okay. But I'd say that he's already hedging his bets because he's used to buying politicians. Well,
You know,
money. To be clear, you can't make
you support someone that you can support, and if you can't support them, you got to look at the way the situation is at that time. I don't think you should have to ask at this point in the race. It's too big of a field. I mean, if you absolutely despise the person and the other two candidates, maybe we need an independent person to run.
In the general election. And we start tonight with you, Dr. Carson. You are a successful neurosurgeon, but you admit that you have had to study up when it comes to...
Well, they're going one by one instead of group questions.
Your critics say that your inexperience shows. You suggested that the Baltic states are not a part of NATO. Just months ago, you were unfamiliar with the major political parties and government in Israel. And domestically, you thought Alan Greenspan had been Treasury Secretary instead of Federal Reserve Chair. Aren't these basic mistakes? And don't they raise legitimate questions about whether you are ready to be president?
Well, I could take issue with.
The trick is that nobody is ready to be president until you're president. You're always going to have some things that you are not aware of at the time, and you can't know everything. That's why you have advisors. And you have to take things as they come. You're not going to know it all. The only people that are fully qualified and experienced to be president are those who have already been president. So just because he makes a few mistakes here and there in his speech, it's not important.
With all of those things, but we don't have time. But I will say, we have a debate here tonight, and we will have an opportunity to explore those areas. And I'm looking very much forward to demonstrating that, in fact, the thing that is probably most important is having a brain and to be able to figure things out and learn things very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
So, experience comes from a large number of different arenas. And America became a great nation early on, not because it was flooded with politicians, but because it was flooded with people who understood the value of personal responsibility, hard work, creativity, innovation, and that's what will get us on the right track now as well.
That's a good answer.
When Jeb Bush announced his candidacy for presidency, he said this: "There's no passing off responsibility when you're a governor, no blending into the legislative crowd. Could you please address Governor Bush across the stage here and explain to him why you, someone who has never held executive office, are better prepared to be president than he is, a man who you say did a great job running your state of Florida for 8 years?" Well,
I'm going to answer that too. Right now, in American politics, we need someone who's going to lead, not someone who's been politician. We've done that for a long time. Right now, what America needs is someone who knows economics, who can understand the current situation with technology, with the new state of warfare, cyber warfare, someone who really deeply cares about this country and comes from the background of people, not someone who's a politician, because it seems like people the candidates all want to shrink government, but not necessarily change government. And that's not the way we need. We need someone who's truly going to protect the Constitution and represent the people.
Well, thank you for the question, Chris. It's great to be here tonight. And let me begin by saying this. I'm not new to the political process. I was making a contribution as the Speaker of the third largest and most diverse state in the country well before I even got into the Senate. I would add to that this election cannot be a resume competition. It's important to be qualified, but if this election is a resume competition, then Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president because she's been in office and in government longer than anybody else running here tonight. Here's what this election better be about. This election better be about the future, not the past. It better be about the issues our nation and the world is facing today, not simply the issues we once faced. This country is facing an economy that has been radically transformed. The largest largest retailer in the country, in the world today. Amazon doesn't even own a single store. And these changes have been disruptive. They have changed people's lives. The jobs that once sustained our middle class, they either don't pay enough or they are gone. And we need someone that understands that as our nominee. If I'm our nominee, how is Hillary Clinton going to lecture me about living paycheck to paycheck? I was raised paycheck to paycheck. How is she going to lecture me? How is she going to lecture me about student loans? I owed over $100,000 just 4 years ago. If I'm our nominee, we will be the party of the future. You have insisted that you're your own man. You say you have a life experience uniquely your own, not your father's, not your brother's. But there are several opponents on this stage who get big applause lines in early voting states with this line. Quote, the last thing the country needs is another Bush in the Oval. So do you understand the real concern in this country about dynastic politics? Absolutely, I do. And
Now, I'm not going to answer the question to Bush here.
I'm going to have to earn this. Maybe the bar is even higher for me. That's fine. I've got a record in Florida. I'm proud of my dad, and I'm certainly proud of my brother. In Florida, they call me Jeff because I earned it. I cut taxes every year, totaling $19 billion. We balanced every budget. We went from $1 billion of reserves to $9 billion of reserves. We were one of 2 states that went to AAA bond rating. They call me Vito Corleone because I vetoed 2,500 separate line items in the budget. I'm my own man. I governed as a conservative, and I governed effectively. And the net effect was, during my 8 years, 1.3 million jobs were created. We left the state better off because I applied conservative principles in a purple state the right way, and people rose up.
They're obviously pretty well prepared for this.
You speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You call women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account?
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
Trump is certainly entertaining.
It was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man who should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everybody. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time. What I say is what I say. And honestly, Megan, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you. All my good products.
Oh, there goes my timer.
But I wouldn't do that. You know what?
You really need to.
We need strength, we need energy, we need quickness, and we need brain in this country to turn it around. That I can tell you right now. Senator Cruz, your colleague, Senator Paul, right there next to you, said a few months ago he agrees with you on a number of issues, but he says you do nothing to grow the party. He says you feed red meat to the base, but you don't reach out to minorities. You have a toxic relationship with GOP leaders in Congress. You even called the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, a liar recently. How can you win in 2016 when you're such a divisive figure?
I'm going to actually comment on this one. One of the problems with the Republican Party right now is a lot of the leadership seems to think that if you don't agree with them, you're not a good Republican. You're not a good person. This has been an ongoing trend for quite a while. The truth is, if you're standing up for truth and standing up for what you believe in, the ethics, the foundations of this country, freedom, then you have every right and you should be standing up to those in the Republican leadership. And as for growing the base, the problem is we're not communicating across the board. It doesn't matter. You don't reach out to Latinos. You don't reach out to this small group. You need to reach out to Americans, everybody. And it's this ideological compartmentalization of America that's hurting us. So you don't just reach to the base. You don't reach to this special interest group. You reach to Americans and toward freedom. That's how you handle that.
Chris, I believe the American people are looking for someone to speak the truth. If you're looking for someone to go to Washington, to go along, to get agree with the career politicians in both parties who get in bed with the lobbyists and special interests, then I ain't your guy. There is a reason that we have $18 trillion in debt. Because as conservatives, as Republicans, we keep winning elections. We got a Republican House, we got a Republican Senate, and we don't have leaders who honor their commitments. I will always tell the truth and do what I said I would.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That was very well said.
You're not exactly the darling of conservatives. You tout your record as a Republican governor in a blue state. On Facebook, the most people talking about you, not surprisingly, come from your state of New Jersey. And one of the top issues they are talking about is the economy. This may be why. Under your watch, New Jersey has undergone 9 credit rating downgrades. The state's 44th in private sector growth. You face an employee pension crisis, and the Garden State has the 3rd highest foreclosure rate in the country. So why should voters believe that your management of the country's finances would be any different? If you think it's bad now, you should have seen it when I got there.
This is.
The fact is, in the 8 years before I became governor, taxes and fees were raised at the state level 115 times. In the 8 years before I became governor, spending.
I'm not going to pretend to know about New Jersey.
And in the 8 years before I became governor,
They're internal issues.
Net private sector job growth in New Jersey, 0 for 8 years. So what did we do? We came in, we balanced an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget by cutting over 800 programs in the state budget. We brought the budget into balance with no tax increases. In fact, we vetoed 5 income tax increases during my time as governor. We cut business taxes $2.3 billion, and we cut regulation by 1/3 of what my predecessor put in place. And what's happened since? 192,000 new private sector jobs in the 5.5 years I've been governor. We have a lot of work to do in New Jersey, but I am darn proud of how we brought our state back.
You've consistently said that you want to make abortion illegal, even in cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. You recently signed an abortion law in Wisconsin that does have an exception for the mother's life, but you are on the record as having objected to it. Would you really let a mother die rather than have an abortion? And with 83% of the American public in favor of a life exception, are you too out of the mainstream on this issue to win the general election?
Abortion, let me take this real quick. Abortion's a very tough subject. The life of the mother exception is something that you pretty much, I think, would have to have, because it comes down to a choice. In any kind of a car wreck, if there's any kind of medical situation, there's often a choice that has to be made. Which one do you save? Which one is more likely to survive? And in that case, you have to make a choice. And in many cases, it may be the mother, probably most, not all. But it really needs to be written such that it can't be abused. because I could see how someone could abuse that if you were to say, oh yeah, well, it was her life in jeopardy, kind of like they do here in California with, oh yeah, he needed pot it's for a medical reason, and so I can see how that could get out of hand, but I don't see how you could not have a medical exemption for abortion if the mother's life is actually in danger. It's a tough choice either way. It's a tough choice to make, but I think you would have to have that.
Well, I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life. And I've got a position I think is consistent with many Americans out there. And then I believe that is an unborn child that's in need of protection out there. And I've said many a time that unborn child can be protected, and there are many other alternatives that will also protect the life of that mother. That's been consistently proven. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who has a radical position in terms of support for Planned Parenthood, I defunded Planned Parenthood more than 4 years ago, long before any of these videos came out. I've got a position that's in line with everyday America. Governor Walker, you have staked out strong positions on social issues. You favor a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriages. You favor a constitutional amendment banning abortions, except for the life of the mother. Millions of people in this country agree with you, but according to the polls, and again, this is an electability question, according to the polls, more people don't. So how do you persuade enough independents and Democrats to get elected in 2016? Chris, I disagree with the idea that the real issue is a constitutional amendment. That's a long and difficult process. I've actually taken a position that's bolder than that. A lot of people are talking about defunding Planned Parenthood as if that's a huge game changer. I think it's time to do something even more bold. I think the next president ought to invoke the 5th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. Now that we clearly know that baby inside the mother's womb is a person at the moment of conception. The reason we know that it is because of the DNA schedule that we now have clear scientific evidence on. And this notion that we just continue to ignore the personhood of the individual is a violation of that unborn child's 5th and 14th Amendment rights for due process and equal protection under the law. It's time that we recognize the Supreme Court is not the supreme being, and we change the policy to be pro-life and protect children instead of rip up their body parts and sell them like they're parts to a Buick.
That was a very good comment. That actually goes right in line with what I think. Wish I'd commented on that one.
You later said that statement, you could have said it better. But the statement went on, and you said, quote, everything they've talked about in foreign policy, they've been wrong for the last 20 years. Why are you so quick to blame your own party? First of all, only ISIS is responsible for the terrorism. Only ISIS is responsible for the depravity. But we do have to examine how we're going to defeat ISIS. I've got a proposal. I'm the leading voice in America for not arming the allies of ISIS. I've been fighting amidst a lot of
I need someone to run this because I missed the question.
Republicans who wanted to send arms to the allies of ISIS. ISIS rides around in $1 billion worth of U.S. Humvees. It's a disgrace. We ought to stop it. We shouldn't fund our enemies, for goodness sakes. So we didn't create ISIS. ISIS created themselves, but we will stop them. And one of the ways we stop them is by not funding them and by not arming them.
Governor Kasich, you chose to expand Medicaid in your state, unlike several other governors on the stage tonight, and it is already over budget by some estimates, costing taxpayers an additional $1.4 billion in just the first 18 months. You've defended your Medicaid expansion by invoking God, saying to skeptics that when they arrive in heaven, St. Peter isn't going to ask them how small they've kept government, but what they have done for the poor. Why should Republican voters, who generally want to shrink government, believe that you won't use your St. Peter rationale to expand every government program?
Well, first of all,
Pausing for a second. That's very specific to him. I'll go ahead and let him.
First of all, Megan, you should know that President Reagan expanded Medicaid 3 or 4 times. Secondly, I had an opportunity to bring resources back to Ohio to do what? to treat the mentally ill. 10,000 of them sit in our prisons. It costs $22,500 a year to keep them in prison. I'd rather get them their medication so they could lead a decent life. Secondly, we are rehabbing the drug addicted. 80% of the people in our prisons have addiction problems. We now treat them in the prisons, release them in the community, and the recidivism rate is 10%. And everybody across this country knows that the tsunami of drugs is threatening their very families. So we're treating them and getting them on their feet. And finally, the working poor, instead of them having come into the emergency rooms where it costs more, where they're sicker, and we end up paying, we brought a program in here to make sure that people could get on their feet. And you know what? Everybody has a right to their God-given purpose. And finally, our Medicaid is growing at one of the lowest rates in the country. And finally, we went from $8 billion in the hole to $2 billion in the black. We've cut $5 billion in taxes, and we've grown 350,000 jobs. Gentlemen, we're turning to a new subject that all of you have been talking about, and some of you have been disagreeing about, and that is the issue of immigration. Governor Bush, you released a new plan this week on illegal immigration, focusing on enforcement, which some suggest is your effort to show that you're not soft on that issue. I want to ask you about a statement that you made last year about illegal immigrants, and here's what you said. They broke the law, but it's not a felony. It's an act of love. It's an act of commitment to your family. Do you stand by that statement, and do you stand by your support for earned legal status? I do. I believe that the great majority of people coming here illegally have no other option. They want to provide for their family. But we need to control our border. It's our responsibility to pick and choose who comes in. So I've written a book about this, and yet this week I did come up with a comprehensive strategy that really mirrors what we said in the book, which is that we need to deal with E-Verify. We need to deal with people that come with a legal visa and overstay. We need to be much more strategic on how we deal with border enforcement, border security. We need to eliminate the sanctuary cities in this country. It is ridiculous and tragic that people are dying because of the fact that local governments are not following the federal law. There's much to do. And I think rather than talking about this as a wedge issue, which Barack Obama's done now for 6 long years, the next president, and I hope to be that president, will fix this once and for all so that we can turn this into a driver for high sustained economic growth. And there should be a path to earn legal status for those that are here. Not amnesty, earn legal status, which means you pay a fine and do many things over an extended period of time. Thank you, sir. Mr. Trump, it has not escaped anybody's noticed that you say that the Mexican government is sending criminals, rapists, drug dealers across the border. Governor Bush has called those remarks, quote, extraordinarily ugly. I'd like you're right next to him, talk to him directly and say how you respond to that, and you have repeatedly said that you have evidence that the Mexican government is doing this, but that you have evidence you have refused or declined to share. Why not use this first Republican presidential debate to share your proof with the American people?
So, yeah, there are pamphlets and there are things that they are doing to get people across the border. But I don't know if they're intentionally sending them, but there are areas of Texas, for example, that the National State Department says you don't even want to go into because they're being run by the drug lords. Our own country has areas that our State Department says we shouldn't go into. That's a problem.
So, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be talking about illegal immigration, Chris. You wouldn't even be talking about it. This was not a subject that was on anybody's mind until I brought it up at my announcement, and I said, Mexico is sending. Except the reporters, because they're a very dishonest lot, generally speaking, in the world of politics, they didn't cover my statement the way I said it. The fact is, since then, many killings, murders, crime, drugs pouring across the border, our money going out and the drugs coming in. And I said, we need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly. And I don't mind having a big, beautiful door in that wall so that people can come into this country legally. But we need, Jeff, to build a wall. We need to keep illegals out.
Mr. Trump, I'll give you 30 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds to answer my question, which was, what evidence do you have specific evidence that the Mexican government is sending criminals across the border? 30 seconds.
Border Patrol, I was at the border last week. Border Patrol, people that I deal with, that I talk to, they say this is what's happening because our leaders are stupid, our politicians are stupid, and the Mexican government is much smarter, much sharper, much more cunning, and they send the bad ones over because they don't want to pay for them, they don't want to take care of them. Why should they when the stupid leaders of the United States will do it for them? And that's what's happening, whether you like it or not.
Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, but we're going to have more questions for the candidates on illegal immigration, plus other key topics, including your questions on Facebook.
Okay. Now we get to a commercial break. I can fast forward and catch back up. I see a couple watching out there. Sorry, this is not going quite as well as I'd hoped it would be. I was thinking they were going to be doing one question and, that style of debate, but that's okay. We'll get some answers in here.
Kind of ended with a cliffhanger there. So let's continue the conversation. Governor Kasich, I know you don't like to talk about Donald Trump, but I do want to ask you about the merit of what he just said. When you say that the American government is stupid, that the Mexican government is sending criminals.
The Mexican government certainly isn't stupid. They have been trying to get their people over here, and they send money back.
Chris, first of all, I was just saying to Chris Christie, they say we're outspoken. We need to take lessons from Donald Trump if we're really going to learn it. Here's the thing about Donald Trump. Donald Trump's hitting a nerve in this country. He is. He's hitting a nerve. People are frustrated. They're fed up. They don't think the government is working for them. And for people that want to just tune them out, they're making a mistake. Now, he's got his solutions. Some of us have other solutions. Look, I balanced the federal budget as one of the chief architects when I was in Washington. Hadn't been done since. I was a military reformer. I took the state of Ohio from an $8 billion hole and a 350,000 job loss to a $2 billion surplus and a gain of 350,000.
I love it when politicians go to talking points.
But the point is that we all have solutions. Mr. Trump is touching a nerve because people want the wall to be built. They want to see an end to illegal immigration. They want to see it. We all do. But we all have different ways of getting there. You're going to hear from all of us tonight about what our ideas are.
All right. Well, Senator Rubio, let me see if I can do better with you. It's as simple as our leaders are stupid, their leaders are smart, and all of these illegals coming over are criminals.
Well, let me set the record straight on a couple of things. The first is the evidence is now clear that the majority of people coming across the border are not from Mexico. They're coming from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Those countries are the source of the people that are now coming in as a majority. I also believe we need a fence. The problem is if El Chapo build a tunnel under the fence, we have to be able to deal with that too. And that's why you need an e-verified system, and you need an entry-exit tracking system, and all sorts of other things to prevent illegal immigration. But I agree with what Governor Kasich just said. People are frustrated. This is the most generous country in the world when it comes to immigration. There are 1 million people a year who legally immigrate to the United States. And people feel like we're being taken advantage of. We feel like despite our generosity, we are being taken advantage of. And let me tell you what never gets talked about in these debates. The people that call my office, who have been waiting for 15 years to come to the United States, and they paid their fees, and they hired a lawyer, and they can't get in, and they're wondering maybe they should come illegally. So these are important issues, and we should address it. It's a serious problem that needs to be. And otherwise, we're going to keep talking about this for the next 30 years like we have for the last 30 years.
Governor Walker from 2002 to as recently as 2013, just 2 years ago, you supported comprehensive immigration reform, including a path to citizenship. Now you say that was a quick reaction to something you hadn't really thought about, and that you've changed your mind. Other than politics, could Could you explain why in the last 2 years you changed your position on a path to citizenship? I know there are other past positions that we shouldn't hold you to.
Yeah, well, Chris, I actually said it earlier. Earlier this year, I acknowledged it. I said I actually listened to the American people, and I think people across America want a leader who's actually going to listen to them. I talked to border state governors and other elected officials. I looked at how this president, particularly through last November, messed up the immigration system in this country. Most importantly, I listened to the people of America. I believe we need to secure the border. I've been to the border with Governor Abbott in Texas and others, seeing the problems they have there. There's international criminal organizations penetrating our southern-based borders, and we need to do something about it. Secure the border, enforce the law, no amnesty, and go forward with a legal immigration system that gives priority to American working families and wages.
Any politician should be able to change their opinion as the facts come across, and they should be able to explain why.
On Facebook, and a number of them were about the murder of Kate Steinle in San Francisco, allegedly shot down by an illegal. Doug Betancourt said this question: will you support Kate Steinle's law, which would impose a mandatory 5-year prison term for an illegal who's deported and then returns to this country? And will you defund sanctuary cities for violating federal law?
Chris, absolutely yes. And not only will I support it, I have authored Kate's law in the United States Senate and filed that legislation. I tried to get the Senate to vote to pass Kate's law on the floor of the Senate just 1 week ago, and the leader of our own party blocked a vote on Kate's law.
A softball question to it.
There was reference made to our leaders being stupid. It's not a question of stupidity. It's that they don't want to enforce the immigration laws. That there are far too many in the Washington cartel that support amnesty. President Obama's talked about fundamentally transforming this country. There's 7 billion people across the face of the globe, many of whom want to come to this country. If they come legally, great, but if they come illegally and they get amnesty, that is how we fundamentally change this country, and it really is striking. A majority of the candidates on this stage have supported amnesty. I have never supported amnesty, and I led the fight against Chuck Schumer's Gang of 8 amnesty legislation.
All right, we're going to switch topics now and talk a bit about terror and national security. Governor Christie, you said that Senator Paul's opposition to the NSA's collection of phone records has made the United States weaker and more vulnerable. Even going so far as to say that he should be called before Congress to answer for it if we should be hit by another terrorist attack. Do you really believe you can assign blame to Senator Paul just for opposing the bulk collection of people's phone records in the event of a terrorist attack?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm the only person on the stage who's actually filed applications under the Patriot Act, who have gone before the federal, the Foreign Intelligence Service Court, who has prosecuted and investigated and jailed terrorists in this country after September 11th. I was appointed U.S. Attorney by President Bush on September 10th, 2001, and the world changed enormously the next day. And it happened in my state. This is not theoretical to me. I went to the funerals. We lost friends of ours in the Trade Center that day. My own wife was 2 blocks from the Trade Center that day in her office, having gone through it that morning. When you actually have to be responsible for doing this, you can do it, and we did it for 7 years in my office, respecting civil liberties and protecting the homeland. And I will make no apologies ever for protecting the lives and the safety of the American people. We have to give more tools to our folks to be able to do that, not fewer, and then trust those people and oversee them to do it the right way. As president, that is exactly what I'll do. Thank you, ma'am.
Responding to that, and I know Trump's about to, but really, yes, we need the tools. Yes, we need to be able to do that. But to do bulk collection of every data traffic on the internet, everybody's traffic, that's what they're doing. And now they're also trying to push for new encryption standards to have backdoors. You can't protect your own data for anything. This is not the way to go. Yes, any tool could be used by criminals and for good purposes. But this is not the way to handle it. It's to make these backdoors just because you might catch somebody. Because doing that, if you have a back door, you're not the only one who has the way to get into those back doors. Criminals find out how to unlock them too, and utilize that for their advantage. So it just doesn't make sense.
I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from innocent Americans. The Fourth Amendment was what we fought the revolution over. John Adams said it was a spark that led to our independence. And I'm proud of standing for the Bill of Rights, and I will continue to stand for the Bill of Rights.
That's a completely ridiculous answer. I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from other people. How are you supposed to know, man? How are you supposed to? How are you supposed to afford a holiday? Let me tell you something. Listen, Senator, when you're sitting in a subcommittee just blowing hot air about this, you can say things like that. When you're responsible for protecting the lives of the American people, then what you need to do is to make sure that here's your problem the way it's supposed to work.
Governor, you fundamentally misunderstand the Bill of Rights. Every time you did a case, you got a warrant from a judge. I'm talking about searches without warrants indiscriminately of all Americans' records, and that's what I fought to end. I don't trust President Obama with all records. I know you gave him a big hug, and if you want to give him a big hug again,
Exactly. There's no need to collect all that data to begin with. Right now, they are collecting pretty much every packet on the internet that goes through certain checkpoints and save it off and process it and try to index them so that maybe when you get a warrant later, you can go through the 6 months of history that you've already been collecting. You don't collect the information up front. You need to collect it when you have the warrant. The problem is A, the politicians don't understand the technology, and B, they don't understand why the Bill of Rights is there, why it is so important. Yes, if you don't have the information, you might miss some attack. But giving up liberty, giving up freedom for some potential security issue, you can't do that. You lose your liberty by giving up, by prioritizing security over liberty. And you can never have security. The famous quote, those who trade liberty for security will have neither.
Senator Paul, the hugs that I remember are the hugs that I gave to the families who lost their people on September 11th. Those are the hugs I remember, and those had nothing to do with politics, unlike what you're doing by cutting speeches on the floor of the Senate, then putting them on the internet within a half an hour to raise money for your campaign, and while still putting our country at risk.
To a Facebook questioner. His name is Alex Shalgren, and he has the following question. My question is, how will candidates stop the reckless actions of ISIS and its strong influence in the U.S. if they were to become president? Senator Cruz, I want to talk to you about this because many of the Facebook users and the folks on Facebook wanted the candidates to speak to ISIS tonight. You asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs a question. What would it take to destroy ISIS in 90 days? He told you ISIS will only be truly destroyed once they are rejected by the populations in which they hide. And then you accuse him of pushing Medicaid for the Iraqis. How would you destroy ISIS in 90 days?
ISIS and ISIL shouldn't exist. That's a group that basically we created by abandoning people. They have been able to use our actions and our information against us. No, they created themselves, yes. But they were able to use our actions to make us look even worse. You want to have a reputation that is beyond reproach. And we want to do that even overseas as much as possible. And we've been abandoning our allies. We help people, then turn our backs on them. We give weapons and things to groups that we might help a situation that we have, and it turns out they turn our back. They turn their backs on us. ISIL destruction needs to happen by going directly toward them. It is both would require military and ideology. And the first thing it needs to start is by being true Americans and telling the truth and treating them with the respect that we have for all humans, or that we should have for all humans.
Megan, we need a commander-in-chief that speaks the truth. We will not defeat radical Islamic terrorism so long as we have a president unwilling to utter the words radical Islamic terrorism.
We have to speak the truth.
General Jademski, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, what would be required militarily to destroy ISIS? He said there is no military solution. We need to change the conditions on the ground so that young men are not in poverty and susceptible to radicalization. That, with all due respect, is nonsense. It's the same answer the State Department gave, that we need to give them jobs. What we need is a commander-in-chief who makes clear, if you join ISIS, if you wage jihad on America, then you are signing your death warrant. You don't see that as an ideological problem? Of course it's an ideological problem. That's one of the reasons why I introduced the Expatriate Terrorist Act in the Senate that said if any American travels to the Middle East and joins ISIS, that he or she forfeits their citizenship, so they don't use a passport to come back and wage jihad on America. Yes, it is ideological, and let me contrast President Obama, who at the prayer breakfast essentially acted as an apologist. He said, gosh, the Crusade, Inquisition. We need a president that shows the courage that Egypt's President al-Sisi did, a Muslim, when he called out the radical Islamic terrorists who were threatening the world.
I'm starting to like Ted Cruz here. He's getting, it's like 2 now. It's been hit right on.
About whether knowing what we know now,
I remember it.
I remember it too. And ISIL, of course, is now thriving there. You finally said no to the families of those who died in that war, who say they liberated the country and deposed a ruthless dictator. How do you look at them now and say your brother's war was a mistake?
Knowing what we know now, with faulty intelligence and not having security be the first priority when we invaded, it was a mistake. I wouldn't have gone in. However, for the people that did lose their lives and the families that suffered because of it, I know this full well, because as governor of the state of Florida, I called every one of them that I could find, to tell them that I was praying for them, that I cared about them, and it was really hard to do. And every one of them said that their child did not die in vain, or their wife or husband did not die in vain. And so why it was difficult for me to do it was based on that. Here's the lesson that we should take from this, which relates to this whole subject. Barack Obama became president, and he abandoned Iraq. He left, and when he left, Al-Qaeda was done for. ISIS was created because of the void that we left. And that void now exists as a caliphate the size of Indiana. To honor the people that died, we need to stop the Iran agreement for sure, because the Iranian mullahs have had their blood on their hands, and we need to take out ISIS with every tool at our disposal.
Governor Walker, in February you said that we needed to gain partners in the Arab world.
Question to Governor Walker.
Not already in the U.S.-led coalition has the potential to be our greatest partner.
What about additional ones? We need to focus on the ones we have. You look at Egypt.
Biggest partners over there, besides Israel. We need to look at partnering with our existing allies. Different countries that we really need to strengthen our relationships with, and show them that we are serious about taking out a threat that is threatening the stability not only of the Middle East, but of the entire world. And it needs to be done before this escalates. Before I paused it, as he said Egypt would be probably good, but the current Egypt government, since the changes over there, I'm not sure how they would support us. Same thing with some of the other governments that have had revolutions under, almost assisted by our current president, or our current administration at least. We need to partner with those European countries that also are having problems with their own immigration problem, with people coming from the Middle East and trying to change their culture. And I am sure that they would be more than willing to help us with that in creating or removing ISIL from that area, and hopefully giving a place where people feel more comfortable and don't feel like they're forced to leave their homeland. I'm all for immigration. Don't get me wrong on that. It is the militaristic immigration where your intent is to change the culture that I do have a problem with in that regard. And that is coming from those, partially from ISIL. And indirect or indirect methods.
Probably the best relationship we've had in Israel, at least in my lifetime, incredibly important. You look at the Saudis. Back earlier this year, I met with Saudi leaders and leaders from the United Arab Emirates, and I asked them, what's the greatest challenge in the world today? Set aside the Iran deal. They said it's the disengagement of America. We are leading from behind under the Obama-Clinton doctrine. America's a great country. We need to stand up and start leading again. We'd have allies not just in Israel, but throughout the Persian Gulf.
Dr. Carson, in one of his first acts as Commander-in-Chief, President Obama signed an executive order banning enhanced interrogation techniques in fighting terror. As president, would you bring back waterboarding?
Waterboarding? Really, we have expanded the term terror in our culture way beyond what it was originally done or intended as. We say, oh, you're terrifying me. You're torturing me. I'm sorry, torture, not terror. Everybody says they're being tortured. And that's not the intent of the word torture, especially the non-torture laws. It is designed for true torture. You look at the medieval times and some of the other aspects of torture that have gone on through the decades and centuries. It is horrendous. Waterboarding is nothing. Yes, it is annoying. It is probably very torturous at the time, but it's not life-threatening. It's not something that is going to permanently damage the person, even though it is scary. People have been expanding the definition of torture to include playing the wrong kind of music to people. That you can't conduct justice. You cannot conduct ourselves if we're always afraid of doing what needs to be done or stepping on people's toes. We just need a clear path, and having waterboarding be banned is probably something that shouldn't have happened in the first place. It's not torture in the classic definition. It's not really something that we need to be avoiding when it's dealing with actual warfare. This is U.S. citizens or in peacetime, yes, but when you're actually dealing with warfare or military type action, whether it's an official war or not, those things need to be on the table.
Thank you, Megan. I wasn't sure I was going to get to talk again. What we do in order to get the information that we need in our business. And I wouldn't necessarily be broadcasting to everybody what we're going to do. We've gotten into this mindset of fighting politically correct wars. Mm-hmm. There is no such thing as a politically correct war. And the left, of course, will say Carson doesn't believe in the Geneva Convention. Carson doesn't believe in fighting stupid wars. And what we have to remember is we want to utilize the tremendous intellect that we have in the military to win wars. And I've talked to a lot of the generals, a lot of our advanced people, and believe me, if we gave them the mission, which is what Commander-in-Chief does, they would be able to carry it out. And if we don't tie their hands behind their back, they will do it extremely effectively.
Very good answer.
Well, in the next series of questions deals with Obamacare and the role of the federal government. Mr. Trump, Obamacare is one of the things you call a disaster. Complete disaster. You're saying it needs to be repealed and replaced. Correct. Now, 15 years ago, you called yourself a liberal on healthcare. You were for a single-payer system, a Canadian-style system. Why were you for that then, and why aren't you for it now?
This is going to be an interesting answer to Trump, but I could go on and talk about all the problems with Obamacare, passing it without really knowing what's in it, and some of the stuff that is really designed not to help healthcare at all. But I could go on and talk about that for hours. I'm going to go ahead and let Trump respond, though.
First of all, I'd like to just go back to one. In July of 2004, I came out strongly against the war with Iraq because it was going to destabilize the Middle East. And I'm the only one on the stage that knew that and had the vision to say it. And that's exactly what happened. The Middle East became totally destabilized. So I just want to say, as far as a single payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland. It could have worked in a different age, which is the age you're talking about here. What I'd like to see is a private system without the artificial lines around every state. I have a big company with thousands and thousands of employees, and if I'm negotiating in New York or in New Jersey or in California, I have like one bidder. Nobody can bid. You know why? Because the insurance companies are making a fortune because they have control of the politicians, of course, with the exception of the politicians on the stage. But they have total control of the politicians. They're making a fortune. Get rid of the artificial lines, and you will have yourself great plans. And then we have to take care of the people that can't take care of themselves, and I will do that through a different system. Hey, Mr. Trump, hold on a second. Newsflash, the Republican Party's been fighting against a single-payer system for a decade. So I think you're on the wrong side of this if you're still arguing for a single payer. I don't think you heard me. You're having a hard time tonight. You pass support for single payer healthcare. You've also supported a host of other liberal policies. You've also donated to several Democratic candidates, Hillary Clinton included, Nancy Pelosi. You explained away those donations, saying you did that to get business-related favors. And you said recently, quote, when you give, they do whatever the hell you want them to do. You better believe it. So what specifically did they do? If I ask them, if I meet them, you know, most of the people on this stage I've given to, just so you understand, a lot of money. Not me. Not me. You're welcome to give me actually, to be clear, not Charlie Chris, not Mike. Hey, Charlie, I have Donald again. I have Kate. I hope you will give to me. Okay. Sounds good to me, Governor. I will tell you that our system is broken. I give to many people. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me. So that's a broken system. So what'd you get from Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi? Well, I'll tell you what. With Hillary Clinton, I said, be at my wedding, and she came to my wedding. You know why? She had no choice because I gave. I gave to a foundation that, frankly, that foundation is supposed to do good. I didn't know her money would be used on private jets going all over the world. It was. But we're going to move on. We'll come back to give one. Just 1 second on this. We spent a lot of time talking about Hillary Clinton and pitting us back and forth. Let's be clear. We should be talking about Hillary Clinton on that last subject because everywhere in the world that Hillary Clinton touched is more messed up today than before she. We have many questions to come. Governor Huckabee on Facebook. John Pitrioni asks this. Will you abolish or take away the powers and cut the size of the EPA, the IRS, the Department of Education? Now, broadly, the size of government is a big concern for Facebook users, Facebook persons, as well as obviously conservatives. But year after year, decade after decade, there are promises from Republicans to shrink government. But year after year, decade after decade,
doesn't happen. In fact, it gets bigger even under Republican politicians. So the question is, at this point, is the government simply too big for any one person, even a Republican, to shrink?
I'm going to take this one. Here's the problem. It's how we're managing the government in a lot of ways. EPA, IRS, a lot of these have responsibilities that are important, but they don't need to do them with the size they are. Each one is its own organization. We can tackle this the way you tackle business and reform and clean house on each one. I think the way we budget needs to be changed. What I call budget zero, or zero, that has another name too, but I call it budget zero. Starting over, not every year, every so many years, looking at their budget and justifying every dollar that's spent. Not saying, well, this year we're going to give you 5% increase instead of the 6% we promised you. That's not cutting the budget. That's not making it more efficient. A lot of times when you reduce someone's budget to work with, they actually become more efficient. That's what we need to do. We need to be taking each one and clean it and reduce their budgets and make sure that they still meet their minimum requirements of what they're required to do as an agency. And that's where we start. It's clean, agency by agency. I keep forgetting to start my timer, so I don't know how many seconds I have left.
The problem is when you go Wall Street to Washington axis of power, there is control of the political climate. The donor class beats the political class who does the dance that the donor class wants. And the result is federal government keeps getting bigger. Every person on this stage who's been a governor will tell you that the biggest fight they had was not the other party, wasn't even the legislature. It was the federal government who continually put mandates on the states that we had to suck up and pay for. And the fact is, there are a lot of things happening at the federal level that are absolutely beyond the jurisdiction of the Constitution. This is power that should be shifted back to the states. Whether it's the EPA, there is no role at the federal level for the Department of Education. And I'm still one who says that we can get rid of the Internal Revenue Service if we would pass the fair tax, which is a tax on consumption, rather than a tax on people's income, and move power back where the founders believed it should have been all along.
Fair tax would definitely shift balance of power.
What I agree with is that we need a significantly changed taxation system. And the one that I've advocated is based on tithing, because I think God's a pretty fair guy. And he said, you know, if you give me a tithe, it doesn't matter how much you make. If you've had a bumper crop, you don't owe me triple tithes. And if you had no crops at all, you don't owe me no tithes. So there must be something inherently fair about that. And that's why I've advocated a proportional tax system. You make $10 billion, you pay $1 billion. You make $10, you pay $1. And everybody gets treated the same way. You get rid of the deductions, you get rid of all the loopholes. Governor Bush, and I have a lot more to say about it. We're going to come back to Carson. Governor Bush, you are one of the two people on this stage who advocates for Common Core education standards, reading and math. A lot of people on this stage vigorously oppose federal involvement in education. They say it should all be handled locally. President Obama's Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, has said that most of the criticism of Common Core is due to a, quote, fringe group of critics. Do you think that's accurate?
Common Core has one benefit in that you can take a student from one area and transfer them to another area, and they should be on relatively the same curriculum. But the way it goes about it, it standardizes the wrong things, and it changes exactly what we're teaching. People are saying math is completely universal. There's no need to worry about politics getting into mathematics when you introduce Common Core. You know what I saw? And I apologize, I just dropped my timer. You know what I saw? My cousin was learning about averages. Averages, just average numbers together. You know what they call that now? They call it fair share. Fair share. That's politics getting into standard subjects. This is not the way it is. This is not the way the Department of Education should be. The Department of Education can set standards. They should be able, if we have a Department of Education, should be able to set standards, set guidelines, and a system assist the local schools. But the actual decisions, the actual education should not be handled at the federal government level. It should be handled at the state and local level because you're going to understand your students. You can't lump every student in this country into one basket and expect it to work.
No, I don't. And I don't believe the federal government should be involved in the creation of standards directly or indirectly. The creation of curriculum or content is clearly a state responsibility. I'm for higher standards, measured in an intellectually honest way, with abundant school choice, ending social promotion. And I know how to do this because as governor of the state of Florida, I created the first statewide voucher program in the country, the second statewide voucher program in the country, and the third statewide voucher program in the country. And we had rising student achievement across the board because high standards, robust accountability, ending social promotion in third grade, real school choice across the board, challenging the teachers union and beating them is the way to go. And Florida's low-income kids had the greatest gains inside the country. Our graduation rate improved by 50%. That's what I'm for. So, Rubio, why is Governor Bush wrong on Common Core? Well, first of all, I do believe in curriculum reform. It's critically important in the 21st century. We do need curriculum reform, and it should happen at the state and local level. That is where educational policy belongs. Because if a parent is unhappy with what their child is being taught in school, they can go to that local school board or their state legislature or their governor and get it changed. Here's the problem with Common Core. The Department of Education, like every federal agency, will never be satisfied. They will not stop with it being a suggestion. They will turn it into a mandate. In fact, what they will begin to say to local communities is, you will not get federal money unless you do things the way we want you to do it. And they will use Common Core or any other requirements that exist nationally to force it down the throats of our people in our states. If you agree with your old friend? He's definitely my friend, and I think the states ought to create these standards. And if states want to opt out of Common Core, fine. Just make sure your standards are high. Because today in America, a third of our kids, after we spend more per student than any country in the world, other than a couple of rounding errors, to be honest with you, 30% are college and or career ready. If we are going to compete in this world we're in today, there's no possible way we can do it with lowering expectations and dumbing down everything. Children are going to suffer and families' hearts are going to be broken that their kids won't be able to get a job in the 21st century. We have many more questions coming on a host of topics here from Quicken Lounge Arena in Cleveland. Stay with us.
Yeah, I hope everyone is going okay. I'm going to fast forward through the commercial here. And sorry about the noise outside. Apparently, someone decided to run their saw, and I have no idea where it's at. But if you hear that high-pitched noise in the background, that's something outside here. I will say this is a bit more challenging than I thought it would be. Partially just the multitasking, the pausing, it's not like I could just answer the question, pausing, trying to see the question that's not just directed to one of them, and then running a timer too. If I ever do this again, I'm going to get an assistant. I'm not going to try to do this all by myself.
Before 10 p.m. on the East Coast. Welcome back to Quicken Lounge Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, and the very first Republican primary debate of the 2016 presidential campaign. 10 candidates on the stage, selected based on their standing in 5 national polls, and tonight they are facing off, answering the questions you want asked.
Gentlemen, we're obviously digging into some subjects in depth, but we're also going to change it up every once in a while throughout the next hour and have many rounds where we ask. You're not going to like it, only a couple of candidates' questions on those subjects. This is the first of the many rounds, and it's about somebody whose name probably hasn't been mentioned enough so far tonight. Governor Kasich, let me start with you. Whoever the Republican nominee is, it looks, at least for now, like whoever that nominee is, he or she will be facing off against Hillary Clinton. You know how she will come after whoever the Republican nominee is. She will say that you, whoever it is, support the rich while she supports the middle class, that you want to suppress the rights of women and minorities. She wants to move the country forward while you, the Republicans, want to take the country back to the past. How will you, if you're the nominee, how will you answer that? and take Hillary Clinton off.
And let me take those one at a time. First of all, I am middle class. I am definitely for middle class. I see how the policies and things that she has specifically done, Hillary Clinton, hurt the middle class, hurt business owners. For women and minorities, I'm for everybody. I love and care everybody. Every human is special. Every human life is special. And that includes those who haven't actually been born yet. So I don't know how she is going to stand up to that. And that's across the board worldwide, and I believe that. As for the third part, is how she's going to have what did he say? We said the economics. She comes across pretty strong and saying that she's for the individual person. You can't get more honest than someone who's been there. And I don't know how she thinks that she would get away with that. She wants Hillary Clinton wishes to say she's something that she isn't. And she wishes to say and stereotype every Republican. She says we're reaching into the past. You need to reach into the past. You don't take everything in the past. You need to look toward the past to see what worked and what didn't, and use those lessons for how to make it work now and in the future. Because we've done things well in the past, and we've done things bad in the past. We take those lessons. Right now, people would say we're at a low point. We need to take those good lessons of the past and look forward. Because we can do better than what we are now. We can do better. We have done better. We could do better again. We just need the lessons of the past, like at my son's school, that have looked towards some of the stuff that worked in a single-room schoolhouse and applied that to modern schools. And we need to take that forward into the future.
Let's start off with my father being a mailman, so I understand the concerns of all the folks across this country, some of whom have trouble, making ends meet. But I think she will come in a narrow way. The nominee of this party, if they're going to win, has got to come at it in a big way, which is pro-growth, which is balancing budgets. We were talking about it. People were saying, could we do it? I was the chairman of the budget committee and the lead architect the last time it happened in Washington. And when we did it, we had great economic growth. We cut taxes and we had a big surplus. Economic growth is the key. Economic growth is the key to everything. But once you have economic growth, it is important that we reach out to people who live in the shadows, the people who don't seem to ever think they get a fair deal. And that includes people in our minority community. That includes people who feel as though they don't have a chance to move up. America's a miracle country, and we have to restore the sense that the miracle will apply to you. Each and every one of the people in this country who's watching tonight, lift everybody, unite everybody, and build a stronger United States of America again. It will be and can be done.
I know that all of you would like to answer this question. We're only going to ask one other candidate before we move on to a different subject. Dr. Carson, basically same question to you. If Hillary Clinton is the nominee and she comes at you with that kind of line of attack, how will you take her on?
If Hillary is the candidate, which I doubt, that would be a dream come true. But, the fact of the matter is, she is the epitome of the secular progressive movement. And she counts on the fact that people are uninformed. The Alinsky model, taking advantage of useful idiots. Well, I just happen to believe that people are not stupid. And the way I will come at it is to educate people, help people to actually understand that it's that progressive movement that is causing them the problems. You look at the national debt and how it's being driven up. If I was trying to destroy this country, what I would do is find a way to drive wedges between all the people, drive the debt to an unsustainable level, and then step off the stage as a world leader and let our enemies increase while we decreased our capacity as a military person. And that's what she's doing.
He's right. I agree with most of what he said. I wouldn't have put it that way, but he's right on.
Money and the government. And Governor Bush, I'm going to start with you. You've made a bold promise in your announcement. You promised 2 terms as president. That many jobs, 19 million, would be triple what your father and your brother accomplished together. And 4% growth. The last president to average that was Lyndon Johnson during the height of the Vietnam War. So, question, how on earth, specifically, would you pull that off?
We've done it 27 times since World War II. I think we need to lift our spirits and have high, lofty expectations for this great country of ours. The new normal of 2% that the left is saying you can't do anything about is so dangerous for our country. There's 6 million people living in poverty today, more than when Barack Obama got elected. 6.5 million people are working part-time, most of whom want to work full-time. We've created rules and taxes on top of every aspiration of people, and the net result is we're not growing fast, income's not growing. A 4% growth strategy means you fix a convoluted tax code. You get in and you change every aspect of regulations that are job killers. You get rid of Obamacare and replace it with something that doesn't suppress wages and kill jobs. You embrace the energy revolution in our country. This president and Hillary Clinton, who can't even say she's for the XL pipeline even after she's left, give me a break. Of course we're for it. We should be for these things to create high sustained economic growth. And frankly, fixing our immigration system and turning it into an economic driver is part of this as well. We can do this.
Governor Walker, when you ran for governor of Wisconsin back in 2010, you promised that you would create 250,000 jobs in your first term, first 4 years. In fact, Wisconsin added barely half that and ranked 35th in the country in job growth. Now you're running for president, and you're promising an economic plan in which everyone will earn a piece of the American dream. Given your record in Wisconsin, why should voters believe you?
Well, the voters in Wisconsin elected me last year for the 3rd time because they wanted someone who aimed high, not aimed low. Before I came in, the unemployment
Very specific questions to the specific candidate.
4.6%. We more than made up for the jobs that were lost during the recession, and the rate in which people are working is almost 5 points higher than it is nationally. Now, people like Hillary Clinton think you grow the economy by growing Washington. One report last year showed that 6 of the top 10 wealthiest counties in America were in or around Washington, D.C. I think most of us in America understand that people, not the government, creates jobs. One of the best things we can do is get the government out of the way, repeal Obamacare, rein in all the out-of-control regulations, put in place an all-of-the-above energy policy, give people the education and skills that they need to succeed, and lower the tax rate, reform the tax code. That's what I'll do as president, just like I did in Wisconsin.
Governor Christie, I want to engage you and Governor Huckabee in a subject that is a big issue in both of your campaigns, and that is entitlement reform. You say that to save the system, you want to raise the retirement age, have to raise the retirement age, and to cut benefits for Social Security and Medicare. And you say that some of the candidates here on the stage are lying. Governor Huckabee says he can save Social Security and Medicare without doing any of that. Is he lying?
No, he's not lying. He's just wrong. I mean, so there's a difference. Listen, I'm the only guy on the stage who's put out a detailed 12-point plan on entitlement reform, and here's why. Because 71% of federal spending right now is on entitlements and debt service. 71%. And we have spent the last hour and 5 minutes talking about the other 29%, and no time on the 71%. And that makes no sense. Now, let me tell you exactly what we would do on Social Security. Yes, we'd raise the retirement age 2 years and phase it in over 25 years. That means we'd raise it 1 month a year for 25 years when we're all living longer and living better lives. Secondly, we would means test Social Security for those who are making over $200,000 a year in retirement income and will have $4 to $5 million in liquid assets saved. They don't need that Social Security check. Social Security is meant to be to make sure that no one's worked hard and played by the rules and paid into the system grows old in poverty in America. If we don't deal with this problem, it will bankrupt our country or lead to massive tax increases, neither one that we want in this country.
Definitely the elephant in the room, Medicare and Social Security.
Governor Christie is talking about would be breaking a promise to the American people. And you can say that you can keep those programs, save Social Security, save Medicare without those kinds of reforms through a fair tax, which is a broad tax on consumption. Please explain to Governor Christie how that would work and how you could save these programs without the kind of painful reforms he said we need.
This ought to be interesting.
Let's all be reminded 60 million Americans are on Social Security. 60 million. A third of those people depend on 90% of their income from Social Security. Nobody in this country is on Social Security because they made the decision when they were starting work at 14 that they wanted to trust some of their money with the government. The government took it out of their check whether they wanted them to or not. And if a person goes to 65, they're going to spend 51 years with the government reaching into their pocket at every paycheck. Now, here's the point. Whose fault is it that the system is screwed up? Is it the recipients or is it the government? And if Congress wants to mess with the retirement program, why don't we let them start by changing their retirement program and not have one, instead of talking about getting rid of Social Security and Medicare that was robbed of $700 billion to pay for Obamacare. It's always that the government figures that they can do this off the backs of people, many of whom are poor and depend on that money. I just think it's fundamentally lying to the people and stealing from them, and we shouldn't be doing it.
Chris.
I don't 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure. I don't disagree with ending Congress's retirement program. I'm a governor. I don't have a retirement program in my state. I don't disagree with that. But here's the news for the American people. He's complaining about the lying and stealing. The lying and stealing has already occurred. The trust fund is filled with IOUs. We can't fix the problem just by entering Congress's retirement. That's worth about this much. We need to go at the fundamental problem. And the fundamental problem is that this system is broken. It has been stolen from. We have been lied to. We need a strong leader to tell the truth and fix it.
All right, this is the 30 seconds finally.
Well, you ask about how we fund it. One of the reasons that Social Security is in so much trouble is the only funding stream comes from people who get a wage. The people who get wages is declining dramatically. Most of the income in this country is made by people at the top who get dividends and capital gains. The fair tax transforms the process by which we fund Social Security and Medicare, because the money paid at consumption is paid by everybody, including illegals, prostitutes, pimps, drug dealers, all the people that are freeloading off the system now. That's why it ought to be a transformed system. All right.
That's exactly one of the reasons I like the fair tax idea. There's a whole lot of reasons why I like the fair tax idea. Takes money out of special interests, too.
Ask you about your business record. Trump corporations, casinos and hotels have declared bankruptcy 4 times over the last quarter century. In 2011, you told Forbes magazine this: "I've used the laws of the country to my advantage." But at the same time, financial experts involved in those bankruptcies say that lenders to your companies lost billions of dollars. Question, sir, with that record, why should we trust you to run the nation's business?
Because I have used the laws of this country, just like the greatest people that you read about every day in business have used the laws of this country, the chapter laws, to do a great job for my company, for myself, for my employees, for my family, etc. I have never gone bankrupt, by the way. I have never. But out of hundreds of deals,
sir, that's your line, but your company has gone bankrupt.
What am I saying? Out of hundreds of deals that I've done, hundreds, on 4 occasions, I've taken advantage of the laws of this country, like other people. I'm not going to name their names because I'm not going to embarrass, but virtually every person that you read about on the front page of the business sections, they've used the law. The difference is when somebody else uses those laws, nobody writes about it. When I use it, they say, "Oh, Trump, Trump, Trump." The fact is, I built a net worth of more than $10 billion. I have a great, great company. I employ thousands of people, and I'm very proud of the job I did. Again, Chris, hundreds and hundreds of deals. 4 times I've taken advantage of the laws, and frankly, so has everybody else in my position.
Well, sir, let's just talk about the latest example, which is Trump Entertainment Resorts, which went bankrupt in 2009. In that case alone, lenders to your company lost over $1 billion, and more than 1,100 people were laid off.
Well,
is that the way that
let me tell you about the lenders. First of all, these lenders aren't babies. These are total killers. These are not the nice, sweet little people that you think, okay? You know, I mean, you're living in a world of the make-believe, Chris. You want to know the truth. And I had the good sense to leave Atlantic City, which, by the way, Caesars just went bankrupt. Every company, Chris can tell you, every company virtually in Atlantic City went bankrupt. Every company. And let me just tell you, I I had the good sense, and I've gotten a lot of credit in the financial pages. 7 years ago, I left Atlantic City before it totally cratered, and I made a lot of money in Atlantic City, and I'm very proud of it. I want to tell you that. Very, very proud of it. So this country right now owes $19 trillion, and they need somebody like me to straighten out that mess.
3,000 people sent us questions about the economy and jobs on Facebook. And here is a video question from Tanya Cialco from Philadelphia. Here she is.
Please describe one action you would do to make the economic environment more favorable for small businesses and entrepreneurs and anyone dreaming of opening their own business.
That's a great question.
Senator, how do you answer, Tanya?
That's a great question.
How do you make the economics better for small business? Great question. You really start the entire financials of the country. The Constitution of the United States says that we are to promote the general welfare, as in make it foster, not welfare as in the welfare system, but make a playing field where companies, where people can expand their lives, where they can go to that next level and take the initiative and go there without it being a steeper and steeper and steeper hill as you try to advance yourself. That's not the way this country was designed. That's not the freedom to innovate. That's not the freedom to explore what makes you happy, to gain property if that's what it is that makes you happy. This country was designed for freedom, and we need to get, number one, government out of the way. I propose we actually take some legislative time and encourage the legislators to go back and reevaluate huge chunks of the law. Keep what works, keep the small stuff, and throw about 90% of it away. The stuff that just red tape, that just slows things down. The parts that aren't enforced anymore. Any law on the books that isn't enforced weakens all laws. That's where you start. And then you do something like the fair tax that simplifies it, taking that burden out of the small businesses for having to do all of the financials on just managing the tax side of their payroll so they can expand. Loosen the reins, let the pressure off, and you'll help with jobs, you'll help with the economy, you'll keep the jobs from going overseas, they'll come back to America, and you'll help small businesses all at the same time. Make the environment good for business and for people to grow.
First of all, it begins by having leaders that recognize that the economy we live in today is dramatically different from the one we had 5 years ago. It's an economy that now has placed us in global competition with dozens of other countries around the world. Now, the big companies that have connections with Washington, they can affect policies to help them. But the small companies like the one Tanya is talking about, they're the ones that are struggling. The first thing we need to do is we need to even out the tax rate for small businesses so that we lower their tax rate to 25%, just as we need to lower it for all businesses. We need to have a regulatory budget in America that limits the amount of regulations on our economy. We need to repeal and replace Obamacare, and we need to improve higher education so that people can have access to the skills they need for 21st century jobs. And last but not least, we need to repeal Dodd-Frank. It is eviscerating small businesses and small banks. Over 40% of small and mid-sized banks that loan money to small businesses have been wiped out since Dodd-Frank has passed. We need to repeal and replace Dodd-Frank. We need to make America fair again for all businesses, but especially those being run by small business owners. Senator Whitney, thank you. Gentlemen, another question for a few of you. Just yesterday, President Obama criticized Republican lawmakers trying to block the Iran deal, calling them knee-jerk partisans, adding that hardliners in Iran who chant death to America were, quote, making common cause with the Republican caucus. Here's what two of your opponents on the 5 p.m. debate stage said about Iran. I will tell you one thing. I would a whole lot rather have Carly Fiorina out there doing our negotiations than John Kerry. Maybe we would have gotten a deal where we didn't give everything away. But the issue for us is to have a Congress that stands up and says,
tragic place. This is a bad deal. Obama broke every rule of negotiation. Yes, our allies are not perfect, but Iran is at the heart of most of the evil that is going on in the Middle East through their proxy.
I want to ask a few of you this. First, Governor Walker, you said that you would tear up the Iran deal on day one. If this deal is undone, what then? Well, first off, let's remember, I still remember as a kid tying a yellow ribbon around the tree in front of my house during the 444 days that Iran held 52 Americans hostage. Iran is not a place we should be doing business with. To me, you terminate the deal on day one, you reinstate the sanctions authorized by Congress, you go to Congress and put in place even more crippling sanctions in place, and then you convince our allies to do the same. This is not just bad with Iran, this is bad with ISIS. It is tied together, and once for all, we need a leader who's going to stand up and do something about it. It's yet another example of the failed foreign policy of the Obama-Clinton doctrine. Senator Paul, would you tear up the deal on day one? I oppose the Iranian deal and will vote against it. I don't think that the president negotiated from a position of strength, but I don't immediately discount negotiations. I'm a Reagan conservative. Reagan did negotiate with the Soviets, but you have to negotiate from a position of strength, and I think President Obama gave away too much too early. If there's going to be a negotiation, you're going to have to believe somehow that the Iranians are going to comply. I asked this question to John Kerry. I said, do you believe they're trustworthy? And he said, no. And I said, well, how are we going to get them to comply? I would have never released the sanctions before there was consistent evidence of compliance. What do you think about what Senator Paul just said? Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. President Obama is trust but vilify. He trusts our enemies and vilifies everyone who disagrees with him. And the reason we disagree with him has nothing to do with party. It has to do with the incredibly dangerous place that this world is going to be as a result of a deal in which we got nothing. We didn't even get 4 hostages out. We got nothing. And Iran gets everything they want. We said if we would have anywhere, anytime negotiations and inspections, we gave that up. We said that we would make sure that they didn't have any nuclear capacity. We gave that up. The president can't tell us what we got. I'll tell you what the world got. The world has a burgeoning nuclear power that didn't, as the Soviets say, we might defend ourselves in a war. What the Iranians have said is, we will wipe Israel off the face of the map, and we will bring death to America. When someone points a gun at your head and loads it, by God, you ought to take them seriously, and we need to take that seriously. Thank you, gentlemen.
The 2016 presidential campaign continues from Cleveland after a short timeout.
Next commercial time. Wow. Kind of crazy. I don't really want to get started on the Iranian deal. The whole thing is exactly as he said. We get pretty much nothing. We can't be trusted.
Welcome back, gentlemen. We're going to move on now to discuss some social issues across the board. Governor Bush.
Oh, that's ought to be good. Social issues. Welcome to Social Issues. By the way, I'm at 722 on my DVR.
I'll start with you. Many Republicans have been outraged recently by a series of videos on Planned Parenthood. You now say that you support ending federal funding for this organization. However, until late 2014, right before you started your campaign, you sat on the board of a Bloomberg charity that quite publicly gave tens of millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood while you were a director. How could you not know about these well-publicized donations? And if you did know, how can you help a charity so openly committed to abortion rights?
This ought to be interesting for Mr. Bush here. But this latest thing with Planned Parenthood is not the first thing they've done, and it's as an organization, you've got to have some real it's hard to have any kind of positive moral stance with abortions aside. The whole way that their history has been, it is just really hard to have any support for them. And I don't even think shouldn't even be a question. Whether they exist or not is a whole other thing, but federally funding it, that's not even a question. It shouldn't be happening.
I joined the Bloomberg Foundation because of Mike Bloomberg's shared commitment for meaningful education reform. That's why I was on it. We never had a debate about the budget. It was presented and we approved it, not item by item. Here's my record. As governor of the state of Florida, I defunded Planned Parenthood. I created a culture of life in our state. We were the only state to appropriate money for crisis pregnancy centers. We expanded dramatically the number of adoptions out of our foster care system. We did parental notification laws. We ended partial birth abortion. We did all of this, and we were the first state to do a Choose Life license plate. Now 29 states have done it, and tens of millions of dollars have gone to create a culture where more babies are adopted.
Did you know?
No, I didn't know, but it doesn't matter. I was working on this board because of the education. My record is clear. My record as a pro-life governor is not in dispute. I'm completely pro-life, and I believe that we should have a culture of life that's informed by my faith from beginning to end. And I did this not just as it related to unborn babies. I did it at the end-of-life issues as well. This is something that goes way beyond politics. And I hope one day that we get to the point where we respect life in its fullest form across the board.
Senator Rubio, you favor rape and incest exception to abortion bans. Colonel Timothy Dolan of New York just said yesterday those exceptions are preposterous. He said they discriminate against an entire class of human beings. If you believe that life begins at conception, as you say you do, how do you justify ending a life just because it begins violently through no fault of the baby?
Wow. That is a tough question for him to answer, since he's made those statements. Life begins at conception. It's not. There shouldn't even be a question with our current scientific knowledge. The DNA is different. People said it's a growth, or they'll refer to it by all sorts of terms. Well, it's just like a parasite. No. Parasites have their own DNA structure, definitely not human DNA. We're talking about human DNA. It's not cancer, that's the same DNA as the host. It's like a unique individual human, genetically. I don't know how you could not argue it as being anything but human. I don't know how you could argue to have not protected under rights. And how we try to fund abortions in other countries, how does that make us look? How can we have try to do the moral high ground on women's rights with these countries that are treating women horrendously when we want to fund abortions when they look at that as killing children, and we should be too? I don't know how you argue this. Rape and incest, it's a sad situation. Well, first of all, incest can be consensual, so let's get rid of that. And rape it's a sad situation. And the father, no matter what, should be, in any case, the father should be involved and be held also responsible. It's a sad situation, but there shouldn't be an exception. Would I accept an exception if that was the only way to get to protect the other lives? Then yeah, you have to go along with the exception. At least it's a step at a time. But no, there shouldn't be. There should be help for them, but you can't punish one person over another. And to not look at it as a person, I don't know how you could not. That's my answer. Let's see how he handles the question.
Well, Megan, first of all, I'm not sure that that's a correct assessment of my record. I would go on to add that I believe all
Rape and incest.
I have never said that, and I have never advocated that. What I have advocated is that we pass a law in this country that says every stage of its development is worthy of protection. In fact, I think that law already exists. It's called the Constitution of the United States.
Isn't that what I just said? Not in those exact words.
Human being is entitled to the protection of our laws, whether they can vote or not, whether they can speak or not, whether they can hire a lawyer or not, whether they have a birth certificate or not. And I think future generations will look back at this history of our country and call us barbarians for murdering millions of babies who we never gave them a chance to live.
Mr. Trump, in 1999, you said you were quote, very pro-choice, even supporting partial birth abortion. You favored an assault weapons ban as well. In 2004, you said in most cases you identified as a Democrat. Even in this campaign, your critics say you often sound more like a Democrat than a Republican, calling several of your opponents on this stage things like clowns and puppets. When did you actually become a Republican?
This could be interesting.
I don't think they like me very much. I'll tell you what, I've evolved on many issues over the years, and you know who else has is Ronald Reagan evolved on many issues. And I am pro-life, and if you look at the question, I was in business, they asked me a question as to pro-life or choice, and I said, if you let it run, then I hate the concept of abortion. I hate the concept of abortion. And then since then, I've very much evolved. And what happened is friends of mine years ago were going to have a child, and it was going to be aborted, and it wasn't aborted. And that child today is a total superstar, a great, great child. And I saw that, and I saw other instances. And I am very, very proud to say that I am pro-life. As far as being a Republican is concerned, I come from a place, New York City, which is virtually, I mean, it's almost exclusively Democrat. And I have really started to see some of the negatives. As an example, and I have a lot of liking for this man, but the last number of months of his father's administration were a catastrophe. And unfortunately, those few months gave us President Obama, and you can't be happy about that.
Okay, Rich, I want to ask you on the subject of name calling.
Yeah, he basically gave up the last few months of his administration. I still don't understand why he did that.
Which is true. No, it's not true. But I have said that Mr. Trump's language is divisive. I want to win. I want one of these people here, or the ones at 5 o'clock, to be the next president of the United States. We're not going to win by doing what Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton do each and every day, dividing the country, saying, creating a grievance kind of environment. We're going to win when we unite people with a hopeful, optimistic message. I have that message because I was a governor of a state that saw people lifted up because we had high sustained economic growth. Our economy grew at double the rate of the nation. We created 1.3 million jobs. We led the nation 7 out of those 8 years. We were only one of 2 states that went to AAA bond rating. I cut taxes $19 billion. If you do that and apply conservative principles the right way, you create an environment where everybody rises up. That's how we're going to win. Campaigning in places to give people hope that their life is better because too many people are suffering today in America.
Well, first of all, Jeff, I am very happy that you denied that, and I appreciate that very much. I mean, he's a true gentleman. He really is. One thing he did say about, and I mean that, the one thing he did say about me, however, was my tone, and I also understand that. But when you have people that are cutting Christians' heads off, when you have a world at the border and at so many places that it's medieval times, it's almost got to be as bad as it ever was in terms of the violence and the horror. We don't have time for tone. We have to go out and get the job done.
Subject of gay marriage and religious liberty. Governor Casey, if you have a son or daughter who is gay or lesbian, how would you explain to them your opposition to same-sex marriage?
Oh, I'm going to have to tackle this before he goes into it. Same-sex marriage, to be honest, is really kind of an oxymoron in a way. It's a redefinition. It's not really a term because marriage forever has been man and woman. People say, well, interracial. Well, there were laws banning interracial marriage. It was still called marriage. There wasn't a new term for it. This is something different. This has never been this way. There's been this slow rolling trend towards changing the term marriage. And we can't have an honest discussion about it until we acknowledge that it's a difference in term. In California, we've had domestic partner laws for a long time that gave same-sex partners the same rights, at least in the state of California, as a married couple without the name marriage. Why then did we have to go through the entire legal stuff here in California to promote a gay marriage when we already had those rights other than the name? They say, well, it's equal but different. The point is, it's been a political leverage battle. That's been the problem, is the political leverage. And it's being appeasing to a specific group, using their issue to leverage their votes on many issues. And I think that the community would be very upset to realize, or when they realize, that that's what's been happening. They've been manipulated. A lot of them have. A lot of people have. Unfortunately, yes, I am against homosexual relationships as from a person in a religious standpoint, because that's what the Bible says, and I'm a Christian. However, in this country, we have freedom, and you have to have the freedom and liberty and the ability to make mistakes, or make, whether it's a mistake or not, make your own choices and live with those consequences. And that's what we have to deal with in this country. You need to have that freedom to make your choices and live with the after effects of them. And that applies to a lot of subjects we've talked about today. So I way ran over my time. I'm going to go ahead and go back.
Look, I'm an old-fashioned person here, and I happen to believe in traditional marriage, but I've also said the court has ruled. Wait, Megan, the court has ruled, and I said we'll accept it. And guess what? I just went to a wedding of a friend of mine who happens to be gay. Because somebody doesn't think the way I do, doesn't mean that I can't care about them, I can't love them. So if one of my daughters happened to be that, of course I would love them and I would accept them, because you know what? That's what we're taught when we have strong faith. So issues like that are planted to divide us. I think the simple fact of the matter is, and this is where I would agree with Jeff, and I've been saying it all along, we need to give everybody a chance, treat everybody with respect, and let them share in this great American dream that we have, Megan. So, look, I'm going to love my daughters. I'm going to love them no matter what they do. Because you know what? God gives me unconditional love. I'm going to give it to my family and my friends and the people around me.
That was a much better answer than mine, I'll tell you that. I like that answer.
Fox on Facebook wants to know the following, quote, what will you do to ensure Christians are not prosecuted for speaking out against gay marriage? And will Christians be forced to conduct business that conflicts with their religious beliefs?
Look, I don't want my...
Let me take this real quick. Christians need to be protected because there's several aspects to marriage. There's a legal aspect of the joining of the union of people. There is the commitment aspect, which no matter what you can do, you cannot take that away. That is a fundamental, I would say, inalienable right, the ability to commit your life to someone else in any kind of relationship. And then the third aspect of that is a ceremonial religious aspect, and it goes back into biblical and I believe other religions as well. Well, I know other religions. And there are three different aspects. Legislatively, we should only be able to affect the legal aspect of the join. We can't have an impact on a commitment. Anybody can commit. And we shouldn't be able to have an impact on a religious acknowledgement of it. As for businesses, such as a cake ceremony or otherwise, it is a ceremony. It is just like a religious ceremony of any kind. A cake, for example, is a part of that, and you should not force somebody to participate in a religious ceremony that they do not agree with.
My marriage or my guns registered in Washington. And if people have an opinion, it's a religious opinion that is heartily felt, obviously they should be allowed to practice that, and no government should interfere with that. One of the things One of the things that really got to me was the thing in Houston where you had the government, the mayor, actually trying to get the sermons of ministers. When the government tries to invade the church to enforce its own opinion on marriage, that's when it's time to resist.
Many in the Black Lives Matter
Much straight
beyond
answer.
believe that overly aggressive police officers targeting young African Americans is the civil rights issue of our time. Do you agree? And if so, how do you plan to address it? If not, why not?
Police, we have a problem in this country with police force. Not in the way you think. A lot of it is the respect of the police force. And it comes from two sides. One, police do have problems. Some people, they don't want to recruit intelligent police officers. There's actually cases where they don't want the intelligence because they don't think they'll stick around. We treat police officers like they're a grunt in some cultures, some areas of the country. And that's not correct. And it reflects on the people that are looking up to those police officers. I have ultimate respect for peace officers. And this is not disparaging them in general at all, but I'm saying there is a culture problem in some police departments. And we also need to teach the respect. It needs to be a mutual issue that is discussed and just talked about truthfully. I do have to tell you, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I can't get my thoughts straight.
Well, I think the most important thing we can do when it comes to policing is something you've had a guest on who's a friend of mine, Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, who's talked to me many times about this in the past. It's about training. It's about making sure that law enforcement professionals, not only in the way in to their positions, but all the way through their time, have the proper training, particularly when it comes to use of force, and that we protect and stand up and support those men and women who are doing their job in law enforcement.
That's a much
very few that don't.
more
There are consequences.
political answer.
Everyone is saying here in America.
Thank you.
Much more political answer. As in, prepared, and kind of didn't really answer the question. You know, I sometimes go off on things that don't really make sense, at least to try to cram it into a 1-minute thing. But I want to speak the truth. I don't like to shy away from when there really is a problem. There's a problem. You can't shy away from it. You speak it truthfully. Anyway, end of commercial break. Back. We are at 7 minutes and 36, or no, I'm sorry, 7 minutes. It is 7:36 p.m. on the DVR. And so
Traveling to Moscow
about 15 minutes back.
President Vladimir Putin. His name is General Qasem Soleimani. He's blamed for hundreds of U.S. troops' deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan. His trip to Russia appears to directly violate UN Security Council resolutions to confine him to Iran. So, Mr. Trump, if you were president, how would you respond to this?
We need to start taking this seriously. This has been a constant issue with Russia. Russia has been violating all sorts of agreements lately, and no one really wants to say anything about it. You know, they were messing with the Ukraine or something like that. That's how people act. This is something we really need to deal with, and it's definitely a problem with the Russian relations with our, should I say, I will say it, enemies, those who want to destroy us, like Iran. This is something that needs to be directly handled and directly addressed, and you do it first by calling them out on it. Specifically, just even in media, you call them out on it, and you tell them that you have your eye on them, and you do it diplomatically first, and then you have to take it to the next level. When you draw a line in the sand, you have to back it up, and we haven't been doing that. And so when you do call somebody out, they're not taking it seriously. You have to back it up. And unfortunately, with something like this, you can't just let it go by. You have to deal with it now before it escalates. And it's not a great situation, but that's what it is.
I would be so different from what you have right now, like the polar opposite. We have a president who doesn't have a clue. I would say he's incompetent, but I don't want to do that because that's not nice. If you look at the deals we make, whether it's the nuclear deal with 24-hour periods, and by the way, before you get to the 24 hours, you have to go through a system. You look at Sergeant Bergdahl. We get Bergdahl, a traitor, and they get 5 of the big, great killers, leaders that they want. We have people in Washington that don't know what they're doing. Now, I agree. Now, with Iran, we're making a deal. You would say, we want him. We want him. We want our prisoners. We want all these things. We don't get anything. We're giving them $150 billion plus. They are going to be, I'll tell you what, if Iran was a stock, you folks should go out and buy it right now because you'll quadruple. This, what's happened in Iran is a disgrace. And it's going to lead to destruction in large portions of the world. Another new development today. Senior defense officials tell Fox they strongly
I like Trump on that.
was behind the cyber attack on the chairman of the Joint Chiefs Office, emails. This comes in the wake of the Director of National Intelligence blaming the Chinese for the largest ever cyber attack, stealing personal data of tens of millions of Americans. Senator Cruz, in your view, have Russia and China committed acts of cyber war? And if you were president, what would you do with them? Well, Brett, of course they have.
Cyber warfare. China has committed cyber warfare. They have been doing this for years, at least a decade. And it is something that does not seem to want to be addressed. We need to take it seriously. The new culture of electronic attacks. We need to take seriously the defense of this country. We need to, by doing that, use the Defense Department funding. Use something to help businesses, not force it on them, but give them resources to protect us, because this doesn't just affect our nation systems, our front-facing computer systems of the government, but every industry, every business in this country, because they don't hack directly to the government. They'll hack those companies as well and attack them, because it's now a front that they can attack within our borders without leaving theirs. And that's a problem.
And over the last 6.5 years, we've seen the consequences of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. Leading from behind is a disaster. We have abandoned and alienated our friends and allies, and our enemies are stronger. Radical Islam is on the rise. Iran's on the verge of acquiring a nuclear weapon. China is waging cyber warfare against America. Russia, General Soleimani, you just mentioned, the Iranian general, is the head of the Al-Quds forces. He's directly responsible for the murder of over 500 American servicemen in Iraq. And part of this Iranian deal was lifting the international sanctions on General Soleimani. The day General Soleimani flew back from Moscow to Iran was the day we believed that Russia used cyber warfare against the Joint Chiefs. We need a new commander-in-chief that will stand up to our enemies and that will have credibility. It is worth emphasizing that Iran released our hostages in 1981, the day Ronald Reagan was sworn into office.
Dr. Carson, in August of 2012, President Obama...
Different take of the answer, but
Syrian
good.
President Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons, quote, that's a red line for us, and that there would be enormous consequences. 1 year later, with overwhelming evidence that Assad had in fact used chemical weapons and crossed that red line, President Obama declined to use military force against the Assad regime. As president, would you have used military force there?
You have to. Chemical warfare is not something to be taken lightly. I don't like us getting involved in foreign affairs. I think we need to protect us as much ourselves as much as possible. But by being such a big country, you seem to have a responsibility. And one of those responsibilities is to live up to your threats. It's a responsibility to help others when asked. In this situation, you can't just stand idly by. You don't want to get involved in the affairs, but chemical weapons like that on that scale, you have to intervene. I don't know how you couldn't. It's it would not be my first choice. Sending anyone to war is not a good thing, but sometimes you have to intervene.
Well, what we have to stop and think about is the fact that we have weakened ourselves militarily to such an extent that it affects all of our military policies. Our Navy is of the smallest size since 1917. Our Air Force since 1940. In recent testimony, the Commandant of the Marine Corps said half of the non-deployed units were not ready. And, the sequester is cutting the heart out of our personnel. Our generals are retiring because they don't want to be part of this. And at the same time, our enemies are increasing. Our friends can't trust us anymore. Ukraine was a nuclear-armed state. They gave away their nuclear arms with this understanding that we would protect them. We won't even give them offensive weapons. We turned our back on Israel, our ally. And in a situation like that, of course, Obama's not going to be able to do anything. I would shore up our military first, because if you don't get the military right, nothing else is going to work. Governor Walker, as president, what would you do if Russian President Vladimir Putin started a campaign?
Maybe I misunderstood the question, the way he answered that. Oh, well.
Campaign to destabilize NATO allies Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, mirroring the actions Putin took at the early days of Ukraine.
Let me rewind it so I can hear that question again, because
armed state, they gave away their nuclear arms with this understanding that we would protect them. We won't even give them offensive weapons. We turned our back on Israel, our ally. And in a situation like that, of course, Obama's not going to be able to do anything. I would shore up our military first, because if you don't get the military right, nothing else is going to work. Governor Walker, as president, what would you do if Russian President Vladimir Putin started a campaign to destabilize NATO allies Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, mirroring the actions Putin took at the early days of Ukraine?
if someone actually did that, where you were trying to destabilize the various former Soviet states, you're going to have to deal with that front. We've seen what's happened in previous, what the Soviets have done before. We've seen how appeasement worked with Germany in leading up to World War II. It doesn't work. You have to nip it in the bud, and you have to join allies to protect those countries before they can be destabilized. Now Russia's not going to like it at all. They don't like us interfering with Ukraine. I know people from Ukraine. I know the immigrants from Ukraine. They're great people, loving people. They don't want their homelands by Russia. They hated the Russians. We can't allow these countries to just be absorbed because they're small countries. We need to protect them as we would any of our friends.
First off, for the cyber attack with Russia the other day, it's sad to think right now, but probably the Russian and Chinese government know more about Hillary Clinton's email server than do the members of the United States Congress.
See my comments on Hillary Clinton's email server. That's a whole.
If I'm president, he won't think about that. Putin believes in the old Lenin attitude, probe with bayonets. When you find mush, you push. When you find steel, you stop. Under Obama and Clinton, we found a lot of mush over the last 2 years. We didn't have a national security that put steel in front of our enemies. I would send weapons to Ukraine. I would work with NATO to put forces on the eastern border of Poland and the Baltic nations. And I would reinstate and put in place back in the missile defense system that we had in Poland and in the Czech Republic. Governor, we like steel. Governor, ought to be the culture.
Yeah, the missile defense system definitely needs to go back.
Women are moving into combat roles. Don't ask, don't tell has obviously been dropped. And now, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter recently directed the military to prepare for a moment when it is welcoming transgender persons to serve open. As Commander-in-Chief, how would you handle that?
Changing military. I don't think the people that are changing this, allowing homosexuals into the military openly, transgender into the military, putting women on submarines, really consider the effects that you have. You take young people and you put them into these situations. What happens? Hey, don't look at me like I'm ignorant. What happens? What happens on college campuses? Yeah. It creates an environment that is not good for the military, for them to function effectively. The same reason why sometimes gender separated classrooms work better. You need to have the discipline. You need to have those separations in order for military to function. It's not a question of fairness. It's not a question of equality. It's a question of having a military that works properly. And the current way this is set up and just shoving this in, what does it do? It destabilizes the military. And I guess if you want to destabilize the military, that's the way to do it.
The military is not a social experiment.
Thank you.
The purpose of the military is kill people and break things.
Not a social experiment. Kill people and break things.
By trying out some ideas that some people think would make us a different country and more diverse. The purpose is to protect America. I'm not sure how paying for transgender surgery for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines makes our country safer. We reduced the military by 25% under President Obama. The disaster is that we've forgotten why we have a military. The purpose of it is to make sure that we protect every American wherever that American is. And if American is calling out for help, whether it's in Benghazi or at the border, then we ought to be able to answer it. We've not done that because we decimated our military. We're flying B-52s. The most recent one that was put in service was November of 1962. A lot of the B-52s we're flying, we've only got 44 that are in service, combat ready. And the fact is, most of them are older than me. And that's pretty scary. The first budget you proposed as senator cut all financial aid to Israel. You have since changed your view on that issue. What made you change your mind? Let's be clear, I'm the only one on the stage who actually has a 5-year budget that balances. I've put pencil to paper, and I've said I would cut spending, and I've said exactly where. Each one of my budgets has taken a meat axe to foreign because I think we ought to quit sending it to countries that hate us. I think we ought to quit sending it to countries that burn our flag. Israel's not one of those. But even Benjamin Netanyahu said that ultimately they would be stronger when they're independent. My position is exactly the same. We shouldn't borrow money from China to send it anywhere, but why don't we start with eliminating aid to our enemies? Okay, but you still say that Israel could be one of the countries that is cut from financial aid. I still say exactly what my original opinion is. Do you borrow money from China to send it to anyone? Out of your surplus, you can help your allies, and Israel is a great ally, and this is no particular animus of Israel. But what I will say, and I will say over and over again, we cannot give away money we don't have. We do not project power from bankruptcy court. We're borrowing $1 million a minute. It's got to stop somewhere. Governor Christie, what do you think of that answer?
Listen, if we want to deal with these issues, we have to deal with them in a way that makes sense. I agree with what Dr. Parson said earlier. The first thing we need to do to make America stronger is to strengthen our military. And I put out a really specific plan. No less than 500,000 active duty soldiers in the Army. No less than 185,000 active duty Marines in the Marine Corps. Bring us to a 350-ship Navy again and modernize the Ohio class of submarines.
Just for talking points, so change the subject.
2,600 aircraft that are ready to go. Those are the kind of things that are going to send a clear message around the world. Those are the things that we need to start working on immediately to make our country stronger and make it better. Those are the things that we need to be able to be doing. And as we move towards dealing with foreign aid, I don't disagree with Senator Paul's position that we shouldn't be funding our enemies. But I absolutely believe that Israel is a priority to be able to fund and keep them strong and safe after 8 years of this administration.
To help your allies, you don't need as much military. Spend it smartly.
We're going to let the candidates make their closing statements, their final thoughts, and God, stay tuned for that.
Okay, we'll see what happens. A commercial break. I'll take a drink here. Again, ginger ale, which is now mostly melted ice. let's see where they're going from here. Thank you for joining me, by the way. Hope you're getting something out of it. I've been definitely enjoying the challenge here, and it's been a learning experience for me on if I was to do something like this, where to prepare, and because going into this with zero preparation has left me scrambling for words at some point.
Moments here together. We're going to allow the candidates to offer their final thoughts. But first, we want to ask them an interesting closing question from Chase Norton on Facebook, who wants to know this of the candidates. I want to know if any of them have received a word from God on what they should do and take care of first. Senator Cruz?
I'm going to just repeat this out loud real quick. Chase A. Norton says, I want to know if any of them have received a word from God on what they should do and take care of first. God is a very important thing in my life. He speaks to us in many ways, and one of those is through the Bible, and it tells what is important. The Bible also says that no person is in a position of power or leadership without God allowing it. That said, God does speak to us. God does speak to me. He speaks to my heart. And I know that which I care about. People, love, learning, and helping each other. And I know that He's given me gifts that can help. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this thing tonight, this speech tonight, this experiment. Is because I see things. I not see things as visually, but I see things in a different way. I see people coming together. I see disparate positions of like, why are we fighting? It is so simple. I want to be able to talk to people. I want to be able to talk and tell people about His love and how to love each other. It is politics. And I'm taking more of my time, and I know it. Politics is a way to express our opinions. This country is a great place. It's a great place for people to express what they believe, what they think. And we've gotten away from that. And that's what God tells me. God tells me that I need to take those talents He's given me about communication, about helping each other get along, and to share them. That's what I know.
Start from you. Any word from God?
Well, I am blessed to receive a word from God every day and receiving the scriptures and reading the scriptures, and God speaks through the Bible. I'm the son of a pastor and an evangelist, and I've described many times how my father, when I was a child, was an alcoholic. He wasn't a Christian, and my father left my mother and left me when I was just 3 years old, and someone invited him to Clay Road Baptist Church, and he gave his heart to Jesus, and it turned him around, and he got on a plane, and he flew back to my mother and me. I would also note that the scripture tells us, you shall know them by their fruits. We see lots of campaign conservatives. But if we're going to win in 2016, we need a consistent conservative, someone who's been a fiscal conservative, a social conservative, a national security conservative. There are real differences among the candidates on issues like amnesty, like Obamacare, like religious liberty, like life and marriage. And I have been proud to fight and stand for religious liberty, to stand against Planned Parenthood, to defend life for my entire career. And I will be proud to continue to do so as President of the United States.
Well, Megan, my father was a millman. His father was a coal miner. My mother's mother could barely speak English, and their son today stands on this podium in the great state of Ohio, not only as the governor, but a candidate for president of the United States. I do believe in miracles. You know, I've had a lot of elections. My elections are really not about campaigns. I tell my people that
that these are about a movement, and a movement to do what? To restore common sense, a movement to do things like provide economic growth, and a movement not to let anybody be behind. You know, today the country's divided. You asked a question about the police and the difficulty in communities. We've got to unite our country again, because we're stronger when we are united, and we are weaker when we are divided. And we've got to listen to other people's voices, respect them, but keep in mind, and I believe in terms of the things that I've read in my lifetime, the Lord's not picking us. But because of how we respect human rights, because that we are a good force in the world, he wants America to be strong. He wants America to succeed, and he wants America to lead. And nothing's more important to me than my family, my faith, and my friends. And I want to question.
Yeah, family.
Well, thanks, Megan. I'm certainly an imperfect man, and it's only by the blood of Jesus Christ that I've been redeemed for my sins. So I know that God doesn't call me to do a specific thing. God hasn't given me a list, the 10 Commandments, if you will, things to act on the first day. What God calls us to do is follow his will. And ultimately, that's what I'm going to try to do. And I hope people have seen in my state, even in the big challenges I took on when I had over 100,000 protesters in and around our Capitol trying to do what I thought was the right thing. It wasn't just how I took on those political battles. It was ultimately how I acted, not responding in kind, not lashing out, but just being decent going forward and living my life in a way that would be a testimony to him and his faith, our faith.
Senator Rubio, I want to ask you the same question, but I do want to mention a woman just came here to the stage and asked, what about the veterans? I want to hear more about what these candidates are going to do for our nation's veterans. So I put the question to you about God and the veterans, which you may find to be related.
Well, first let me say, I think God has blessed us. He's blessed the Republican Party with some very good candidates. The Democrats can't even find one. This country has been extraordinarily blessed, and we have honored that blessing, and that's why God has continued to bless us. And he's blessed us with young men and women willing to risk their lives and sometimes dying for the safety and security of our people. Unfortunately, today we have a VA that does not do enough for them. I'm proud that last year we helped change the law. We changed the law to give the power to the VA secretary, the ability to fire any executive that isn't doing their job. And it is outrageous. They've only fired one person today. When I'm president of the United States, we're going to have a VA that cares more about our veterans than about the bureaucrats who work at the VA.
Question to you about God and his role, but also one of the issues that the public was very interested in, and we touched on it earlier, is race relations in this country and how divided we seem right now. And what, if anything, you would do as the next president to help heal that divide?
Well, I think the bully pulpit is a wonderful place to start healing that divide. You know, we have the purveyors of hatred who take every single incident between people of two races and try to make a race war out of it and drive wedges into people. And this does not need to be done. What we need to think about instead, you know, I was asked by an NPR reporter once, why don't I talk about race that often? I said, it's because I'm a neurosurgeon. And she thought that was a strange response. And I said, you see, when I take someone to the operating room, I'm actually operating on the thing that makes them who they are. The skin doesn't make them who they are. The hair doesn't make them who they are. And it's time for us to move beyond that. Because
Yeah.
our strength as a nation comes in our unity. We are the United States of America, not the divided states. And those who want to destroy us are trying to divide us, and we shouldn't let them do it.
Now, each candidate will make a closing statement. We'll all have 30 seconds to make a closing statement for this debate.
I'm not going to make a closing statement. I think you.
John Casey.
No, I'll talk after they do.
Tonight you hear about what people want to do. I want to tell you what I've done. I was a member of the Armed Services Committee for 18 years. I spent a big chunk of my life studying national security issues and our role in the world. Number two, I was the chairman of the House Budget Committee and one of the chief architects the last time we balanced the budget. And it was the first time we've done it since man walked on the moon. We had a $5 trillion surplus and we cut taxes. I spent 10 years in the private sector actually learning how business works. And now I'm the governor of Ohio, and I inherited a state that was on the brink of dying. And we've turned it all around with jobs and balance, rising credit and tax cuts, and the state is unified, and people have hope again in Ohio. Well, thank you, Megan. Listen, I was born into a middle-class family in New Jersey. My dad came home from serving in the Army after having lost his father, worked in the Breyers ice cream plant in Newark, New Jersey, was the first person to graduate from college, put himself through college at night. My mom was a secretary. I was appointed United States Attorney on September 10th, 2001, and spent the next 7 years of my career fighting terrorism and putting terrorists in jail. I'm a conservative, pro-life governor in a state where it's really tough to be both. In a state like New Jersey with lots of Democrats, but still we cut taxes, we balance budgets, we fought the teachers union. This president has had weak leadership, which has led to bad choices. We got to stop worrying about being loved and start worrying about being respected, and that's exactly how I'll lead our country.
Senator Paul closing statement. I'm a different kind of Republican. I've introduced a 5-year balanced budget. I've introduced the largest tax cut in our history. I stood for 10 and a half hours on the Senate floor to defend your right to be left alone. But I've also gone to Chicago, I've gone to Detroit, I've been to Ferguson, I've been to Baltimore, because I want our party to be bigger, better, and bolder. And I'm the only one that leads Hillary Clinton in 5 states that were won by President Obama. I'm a different kind of Republican. Senator Marco Rubio. Thank you. You know, both of my parents were born into poor families on the island of Cuba. They came to America because it was the only place where people like them could have a chance. Here in this country, they never made it big, but the very purpose of their life was to give us the chance to do all the things they never could. My father was a bartender, and the journey from the back of that bar to this stage tonight, to me, that's the essence of the American dream. It's what makes our nation different. And I'm running for president because I want that to still be possible for the people trying to do that now. I run for president because I believe that we can't just save the American dream, we can expand it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And that's why I'm asking for your vote, so we can make America greater than it's ever been and make of this century a new American century. Thanks, Sarah.
A new American century. I like that.
If I'm elected president, let me tell you about my first day in office. The first thing I intend to do is to rescind every illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by Barack Obama. The next thing I intend to do is instruct the Department of Justice to open an investigation into these videos and to prosecute Planned Parenthood for any criminal violations. The next thing I intend to do is instruct the Department of Justice and the IRS to start persecuting religious liberty. I then intend to cancel the Iran deal and finally move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. I will keep my word. My father fled Cuba, and I will fight to defend liberty because my family knows what it's like to lose it.
Dr. Carson, closing statement.
Well, I haven't said anything about me being the only one to do anything, so let me try that. I'm the only one to separate Siamese twins. The only one to operate on babies while they were still in mother's womb. The only one to take out half of a brain, although you would think if you go to Washington that someone had beat me to it. But I'm not the only one who's willing to pick up the baton of freedom, because freedom is not free and we must fight for it every day. Every one of us must fight for it because we're fighting for our children and the next generation.
It seems like this election has been a whole lot about a person who's very high in the polls, that doesn't have a clue about how to govern, a person who has been filled with scandals and who could not lead. And of course, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton. I think America,
I saw that one coming.
but it's not beyond repair. But it's going to take leadership who sees the greatness of this country and who believes that once again we can be
one nation under God. I'll be my best to do that, and thank you.
And indivisible.
Thanks. I'm a guy with a wife and 2 kids and a Harley. One article called me aggressively normal. I ran for governor because I was worried about my kids' future. Then I took on the big government union bosses, and we won. They tried to recall me, and we won. They targeted us again, and we won. We balanced the budget, cut taxes, and turned our state around with big, bold reforms. It wasn't too late for Wisconsin, and it's not too late for America. That's why I asked for your vote.
Nice prepared speech. Closing.
Closing statements.
Here's what I believe. I believe we're at the verge of the greatest time to be alive in this world. But Washington is holding us back. How we tax, how we regulate. We're not embracing the energy revolution in our midst, a broken immigration system that has been politicized rather than turning it into an economic driver. We're not protecting and preserving our entitlement system or reforming for the next generation. All these things languish while we have politicians in Washington using these as wedge issues. Here's my commitment to you, because I did it as Florida. We can fix these things. We can grow economically and restore America's leadership in the world so that everybody has a chance to rise up. I humbly ask for your vote whenever you're going to get to vote, whenever the primary is. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Trump, closing statement, sir. Our country is in serious trouble. We don't win anymore. We don't beat China in trade. We don't beat Japan with their millions and millions of cars coming into this country in trade. We can't beat Mexico at the border or in trade. We can't do anything right. Our military has to be strengthened. Our vets have to be taken care of. We have to end Obamacare, and we have to make our country great again, and I will do that. Thank you. Calvin, thank you.
It's over.
That's it.
You're relieved? They're nervous before they don't look relieved. They like, get me out of here. Thank you all very much. Let's do it for the first Republican primary debate night of the 2016 presidential race.
And that's it. It's an interesting way that she ended it, but oh, she's running at a thing. I'm going to go ahead and turn the TV down at this point. I have to reach over here because I had a little technical difficulty earlier today, and I ended up with one of the most makeshift sets you have ever seen around here. So thank you for joining me. I've got looks like one Kathy over in the Mixler side and 2 people over on the YouTube side. So thank you for joining me. And if anyone has any questions, I got the text chat open at least. I'll be here for another couple minutes. But closing remarks. It was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. Need to be prepared if I'm going to take something like that on. But, you know, I think they might have some good candidates there. They can stick to the truth and stick to what they really need to take care of. See, I'm not even looking at the camera. Stick to the truth. That's going to be the key. That's what we really need, is someone who's going to be truthful with the American people and true to what this country was founded on and our core American ideals. That's the key. All these individual issues kind of all roll up into that. Thank you for joining me. Okay. Let's see. My hope. I know there's a delay. Oh, I see there is some. Do I have a favorite cheese? Okay. There's another secondary chat room that I didn't see on here before. Do I have a favorite cheese? Uh, myself, I'm kind of cheesy. Usually I prefer Swiss, though, I think. It's nothing fancy, but I actually, you know what? Gouda. It would have to be Gouda. I know there's a delay. You're glad you enjoyed it. I can be talking audio even though the chat's out of sync here. Yeah, very passionate. I don't know if that's always a good thing or a bad thing, but I do deeply care about this country, so. There's the. Let's bring it back. You too. I'll definitely go see. I wonder if I have some Gouda in the fridge. They make some good some up in Oakdale, California here. I have to go get some of that. Yeah, a bit of a drive though. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to close the Mixler feed and then I'll close the YouTube feed. So thank you very much and have a good night. Oh, if you ever have any questions, just email me. You could probably Bitemaster at podcast99 or Jeremy at jeremyhannon.com. It'd be a great way to get a hold of me. Thank you and have a good evening. That's how I invite people.